It is 6:04, 6:05, whatever. 6:04. I will call this meeting of the Juneau Utility Commission to order. I have, roll has been taken. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ross, second by Cheryl to approve the agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Minutes of the previous meeting, you have 2 months worth. So,
But I wasn't here.
well, we had,
Did we really have an official reading of that?
no, we didn't.
Unless you count the one the next night. City Hall.
Okay. On the personnel meeting for February 28th, it's Rafael Caniff.
Somehow my name got in there messy a few times, so. I wasn't there.
Where is it?
The
On the
28th.
meeting on the 28th, somehow my name is on there, one or two places.
Going into closed session.
You ever put members absent,
Oh.
Coons?
I did Coons instead of Kenneth, I'm sorry.
And there's one there that needs to be fixed.
And members absent too, Cory. If they had parts named to that.
What?
Any other,
You're here in spirit.
Was at the dentist.
so,
I have a,
On my way to.
I'm not sure if this is, I mean, I know your minutes are there, but at some point in time, we need to discuss that action that was taken. At that personality.
which one?
The 28th, on the 28th.
On the 28th, yeah. I guess my first question, I read through this and I'm like, okay, does the utility abide by this policy? Is this the policy book that we abide by and that we use for all of our employees here?
In terms of which,
In terms of whatever we do here, is this the policy that we hand our employees here and say, this is what we're living by? And I'm asking for a particular reason because, and I'm not trying to be ugly or anything, but Kylie with 15 days of vacation with no prorating is not according to our standards here. And that does become an issue opens a can of worms for everybody else if they begin to say, hey, how long has Kylie been here?
She'll be here 5 years on July 24th.
But she was not meeting to that deadline. So according to the policy here, vacation is 15 days of paid vacation after 5 years of continuous service. So by giving her that third week, we are out of compliance with the manual, and we're being on personnel. I'm like, oh gosh. We've opened a big can of worms on that one.
I have another can of worms that, in the council acts affecting utility, 70/2021, you change the holiday policy without contacting the utility commission. This should have been done on a joint meeting, not just city personnel.
I think at
Utility
the moment,
personnel.
though, Mac, we're asking about this
Yeah.
because it's in our minutes. And I think we should bring that one up when we talk about that.
Okay,
And that would be a good thing to bring back.
I do, I
At a
agree.
joint meeting.
I agree.
so,
I don't know how you want to handle it because she's been told yes, but according to policy, it really is a no.
well, I can say that we looked at it from the point of view that she was, found ways of creating us to get more money back from our delinquent customers. she went out of her way to do that. She didn't have to go through all that and go find that stuff for us.
Is that not part of her job though, Mac? I mean,
To find out different ways to get money back?
sure, within the scope of her job to pursue, and wouldn't we ask that of any employee, to go above and beyond within their job, not just, okay, this is my compartment because life changes?
It's the way it was done for how many years? Now all of a sudden, I mean, I was thinking we reward her for, the 5 years she gave us.
Are you going to continue to reward every employee? Because she did not give us a full 5 years, and that's my point, that's my question for it of, you know, if we're gonna say this is our policy, then we need to stick with our policy for everybody. And consistency is what I'm asking for. And though there are gonna be some employees that go above and beyond and do their job exceptionally well and go further, and I recognize that. And there's times that I'm the low man on the totem pole and don't put forth the effort at my job, and there's other times I'm the kingpin for it, you know, and I think it depends on which dynamic you're looking at. But I'm asking for knowledge sake of, are we living, is this the policy, or are we as a utility developing a new policy for the utility employees? That's all I'm asking.
So what, did you give her the 15, you wouldn't give her the 15 days, you would,
Not.
and then prorate the 15 days? She's a month short. You earn your vacation 1 year for the next year.
Yeah.
So she has worked
It-
for, it doesn't say, you earn your vacation 1 year to use it the next year, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, she's 1 month short of 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, do you prorate on 10 days of vacation, or do you prorate that 5 weeks of vacation?
This goes back to policy, what does it go on? It doesn't say there's any prorating of anything there.
If you were to quit, you get paid out the current days you had coming. Because she didn't make that benchmark of 5 years. So she doesn't get up to 5 days additional vacation for the following year, because obviously she's not gonna be here, so she'd have to get paid out for it, if that was the case. But up until the 5 year mark, she only gets 10 days vacation, is that what I'm hearing? So that ends at time she terminates her employment here, so that would change. If you're looking to reward her or compensate her for training a new person or something like that, then I think you're gonna have to set up a rate or something like that. That was your intention, and that was what we got an inkling of, that the reason for this happening was that she'd be training her replacement or something after her.
This was discussed already?
No, it
I
was
haven't
just,
discussed it.
no, it was just brought up we were brought abreast of this policy being violated by the commission, through your minutes is what it boiled down to, so that's, I mean, no, everything's up front and what have you. Point Cheryl's making is she didn't make that 5 year benchmark, so she's not entitled to the additional vacation.
According to the policy, if we're gonna use the policy.
Does she get her full 10 days?
I think so, didn't she?
She's entitled to? No.
Well, she's accrued, she would have had 10 days coming to her.
Up to,
Up
up through
to
4 years
4
into the
years.
5th, then. Then she graduates to the additional 5 days after the 5 year.
But if she's not gonna be here for that anniversary date, she wouldn't be getting any vacation, whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or 10 or 15 days. That's what I'm hearing.
Because it's an accrued thing, so what she's working now is giving her the vacation for next year.
Okay.
So it'd be based upon the 10 days that she would normally have, not 15.
And my understanding of it is you earn 1 year for the next year. So in that case, you're working your 4th year to earn up to that 15 days of vacation. So
Get it
it-
after 5 years of continuous service is what the policy says.
discuss it later then.
Okay, it was just a question,
Okay.
Matt, cause are we, what are we doing with policy or not policy?
All right, so, approve the minutes of the previous meetings with the changes made, and to bring up the, item 2 in the February 28th meeting. 2-2. All right? So, need a motion?
So moved.
Okay, a motion by
Caniff, second by
Caniff,
Coombs.
second by Coombs. All right, any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Public appearances, Mr. Gunderson.
All right, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'll start at the end and then we'll go to the front and work our way back to the end again. So tonight I'm looking for authorization from the commission to authorize MSA to commence on the design of the treatment facility. And so to back up to kind of the start, if you remember, I was last year in November, Matt and I were here along with Tom Lunke, kind of laying out the path towards getting to where we want to go here. And we had talked about originally trying to move ahead by February so we could meet the funding deadline. Obviously now we're in March. I think we can make it I know we can make it if the commission authorizes us to do so for the funding for this year. So let's just talk about why did we want to wait some time? We wanted to figure out Sensient in that meantime. And based on the communication I've been involved in, Matt's been involved in a little bit more directly, we do have a large agreement with Sensient on the agreement moving forward. Is it signed? I do not believe so. It's not signed at this point. But the last communication we had with Jim Vermillion about 2 weeks ago was everything looks good to me. I just got to run it by a few other people, and that's where we have been. There was an email from Tom Unke today, basically saying it should be in the attorney's hands just to finalize the legal language of it. And that's to me what I understand of where it kind of sits with Sensient. They had asked us a few questions. 2 years ago they had said, well, we need about 300,000 gallons, but then somewhat predictably in the last few months they said, well, what about 350,000? What about 400,000? And my answer to that is, and it was to them, and Matt and I worked through it, that's fine. It doesn't really, within the scope of the conservative planning stage we're at now, that kind of change from them doesn't really change what we're planning for, or really the overall cost estimate that we're utilizing to break down the cost. What it does is just shifts more dollars their way, as opposed to the city's direction, and to the tune of about $250,000 probably swings their way as opposed to the city. Okay, because largely what Sensient is clear water. If they were saying, well, we're gonna decommission our treatment facility, we're gonna give you all of that high strength waste, that's a completely different story. Then we got to completely stop and back up and do a bunch of rework. But what he was talking about is they're going to continue to treat that water, just more water. And they gave us the numbers and the amount of the organic strength of the wastewater. They're saying it's going to be the same. It's within the scope of what we've planned for. So we said that's fine. If this is what it is, as long as you're telling me you're not going to take your treatment facility down and send it all to Juneau, that's fine. We can handle it. So we reworked the numbers and like I said, we identified about $250,000 would shift their way a percentage point or so. And so they said, Jim was, okay, I'm fine with that. They worked out the agreement. And so I think it is just waiting for signature as far as I understand. Based on the email today from Tom, he basically offered, hey, I don't know if you really need Baker Tilly as part of this anymore. It seems to be we've worked out the rates, we've worked out the cost. It's maybe just the lawyers of the commission and the lawyer of Sensient to just finalize that. So that's what I understand of kind of where Sensient's at. Does anyone have any other feeling about where Sensient's at or thoughts? Or I'm just listening from the outside and being part of the conversations, but not in direct negotiation of it. That's just what I understand of where it's at. Dan, I don't know if you have any other opinions on that or not, but
No, I'm getting that, especially in front of Cam you just kinda sparked a thought, what would happen if Cincinnati would abandon their pretreatment facility there? What would we have to do to this plant to be able to?
We'd have to pay a big, I mean, we would, you're probably gonna build another one of these treatment, you're gonna build a whole, I mean, you're talking a double, you know, I shouldn't say double, but a much bigger facility, but then they'd be paying for the whole thing. If they're gonna be adding all that, that's where they would have to foot the bill for such a thing.
I just wonder what their costs are to maintain and keep that pretreatment facility running.
Mhm.
How that, would they be better off paying us, you know, bigger dollars for treating all their waste? But I sure wanna see that happen, but I'm just wondering, you know, what's gonna dictate that?
Mhm.
There's gotta be some decision made up the upper end there, you know.
To me, the way I would think about it if I was them is they have quite a bit of money invested in capital into treatment infrastructure. They want to just abandon all that and have Juneau build that. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but I'm not obviously in those discussions. But
All right. Just
but I think the bottom line is it would take a complete reamendment of all the agreement and everything works from.
Yeah, we
recom-
throwing the
you'd
book
be-
out.
We throw the whole book out and starting over.
Yeah.
But we've not, through all the discussions, we've not gotten any indication that's the intent whatsoever. So where we are now is we have a funding deadline at the end of September, which means we have to have the facility design, the spec books, the plans all completed, submitted with the funding application to go for funding this year with the DNR Clean Water funding. Okay, it's pretty dang good timing with traditionally the I don't know, we don't have the final numbers on this, but traditionally grants are 30% for this. Well, with the infrastructure package that happened, they're talking, this is not a final number, talking probably maybe up to 50%. So, for grants, with the new 5-year infrastructure bill that they passed. So, that would be the benefit really to moving forward right now. So, I guess from that, I'll pause. Is there any questions about that? The next part I was going to go into is really review what we're planning to do. And kind of the scope of design. We reviewed this a little bit up ahead of time just to get a little bit more detail, but I'm happy to go into any level of detail on what we're planning. But any questions about Sensient or funding or schedule?
You just handed Peter an article that they picked out of the Watertown paper about Waterloo's new wastewater treatment plant.
Mhm.
What kind of level of funding would they receive?
Waterloo? What does it say?
I probably read it and forgot it.
$21 million. $21 million from the Department of Agriculture.
Oh, they went for USDA. Yeah, you guys, unfortunately, is not really eligible for USDA. It's a financial hardship thing, and the numbers in Juneau are clearly not as rough as they are in Waterloo apparently. But
They must have one hell of a good sized plant then, if that's the case.
That's the 40-year loan.
they also finance it
Well,
on 40 years too.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, it was a long time ago when we were talking about all the financial options. We talked about 40-year versus 20-year, and we pretty much said 20-year was kind of the best route. So the facility plan is based on the current rules of the Clean Water Fund. So if you guys get better grants, then our rate increase and stuff like that would be looking better.
But not as much. Yeah, so what we wrote the facility plan, what we had the public hearing based on, was based on not, we tried not to be as conservative. We didn't want to promise grants or promise. We tried to be as least conservative as possible. Worst case scenario as possible for that. So the idea is that it would be better than that. The rate increase would be less with that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question, in the maintenance garage,
Mhm.
the new maintenance garage, is this maintenance garage larger than what we originally talked about? Or is it the same size? Or is that?
I think it's generally the same square footage that was planned however long ago. The
Okay.
2,500 square feet was about what was planned.
Does that then require, if I remember, I read correctly, that it now has a bathroom in it? Is that requirement of the size of the building and how we're using it? Because bathrooms aren't cheap.
So, the
And I don't wanna just
No, no, no,
on having
no,
a
this-
bathroom,
these-
that's not.
so talking to our architects and the people who submit to the state building review, probably no matter how big that building is, this project's gonna have to submit it to state building review. And they're gonna say it needs to have the facility needs to have an ADA compliant bathroom. Now, we talked about this before, the likelihood that the utility hires somebody in a wheelchair to do a wastewater treatment job is probably not high, but the way that the state building code is written and the way that the reviewers look at it, it's a public facility and therefore it does need to have an ADA compliant bathroom. So, we can build a bathroom, but the likely thing, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand too, was we just remodel the existing bathroom to be ADA compliant. So we don't need to build a second bathroom. The point is it needs to have at least one ADA compliant bathroom. So we could do that, or we could just remodel the existing one. And I think the preference was probably just to remodel the existing one as opposed to build a second one in that building.
I thought I had read something within the
It does say that.
design that it says there would be a bathroom in there, and, you know, you're talking about ADA compliant, if someone comes to our facility, and they need to use the bathroom, we're sending them to the maintenance shop?
Right.
That would be.
Right. That's the intent with that, and maybe it's not as clearly written as it should be, is we need to have an ADA compliant bathroom, whether that's remodel the existing one or build a new one. That's kind of the basis we were assuming. And so also just want to touch on that then, that building. We talked about, it doesn't probably need to be a fancy garage bay maintenance building where they're, you know, doing truck maintenance in there all the time. It probably needs to be more of a heated storage is what Alex and Peter were talking about.
Okay.
And kind of with
That's
the,
what I was understanding.
yeah, and kind of with the intent that, really so they can have more room to do maintenance in the main maintenance space. So they can store vehicles or store other equipment over there. That's basically what we were talking about, right guys? Yeah.
That was what I understood, so when I was seeing this, I'm like, I know I've been gone from a couple meetings, so I'm like,
Right.
okay, what happened?
Right. No, that, I think we're on the same page. It might be worded a little fancier than we want it to be, but that, I think we're on the same page with that. And so whether it has we bring water to it or not, we'll figure that out, but, not gonna make it any fancier than what those guys need it to be.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
The original space was 1,500 square feet.
It was 1,500, okay. So we were assuming at this point 2,500.
Yeah, what we did last time I was on site with the architect, we sat down and said, okay, let's list out everything that's gonna be in there. And then we kinda just moved pieces around and said, okay, in general, we need this much space. So,
That's what it came up to then.
yeah, depending on what you wanna actually store in there, you know, it's kinda shrinking and making it larger.
So we'll when we get into the first part of the design, we'll obviously really figure out what that's gonna look like and layout to be. So let me just kind of go through, there's some extra maps here if you don't have one, otherwise I can just kind of talk through it here. So I'll talk through the upgrades so you guys understand the scope. This has been worked out through the facility plan and then further conversations with staff. And a lot of it it's to set a basis for where we start from. There's always, when we get into the design, there's always going to be things that change, especially when you start digging into an existing facility. There's all these things, you don't know what you don't know when you dig into design. There's going to be some adjustments. But this is the set of basis. As long as we're not saying, hey, we want to add another building over here, that's where things change. But I don't think that's what we're talking about. This is just a set of a place to start from. We all understand what the scope of the design is and where we're starting from. Okay? So I'll just go through this. There's this, it's the scope of services list here, the scope of the project, and I'll just kind of describe it from the map. So we'll start in the main service building. That's the main structure there.
It's in your packet.
It's in this one?
No, in your packet.
Oh, in this packet, thank you.
I'll wait till you get there. It says scope of services, design, and bidding on the top.
Thank you.
There you go. So
This is what I wrote through.
if you go to number 2 there, scope of project, and I can reference the map as well as what's written on there, but we're going to replace the mechanical fine screen and wash press. Okay, so that's the first device. I can wait there, sorry. There you go. So number 2, scope of project. 2A, mechanical fine screen. So when the wastewater comes in the plant, that's the first thing it hits. This is meant to take out all the rags, all the things that get flushed down the toilet that aren't supposed to get flushed down the toilet. That's what the screen takes out, and that is in dire need of replacement, that piece of equipment. And there's also a wash press with it, and so what it does is when it takes it out, it actually compacts it and washes it to get the organics off, and really just takes out all those inorganic rags and other things that get flushed down the toilet we don't need to talk about. But and it gets compressed and into the waste basket, and that gets hauled away. You can imagine the things they get find on a fine screen. Fun fact: some people that MSA has we have a operations team. They do contract operations for people. We operate the one at Ho-Chunk. They found $100 chips, things like that. Sometimes they have a big what am I trying to say, kitchen there, obviously in restaurants. Sometimes they'll this much shrimp, oh, it doesn't get used, so that just ends up on the screen, just thousands of shrimp, uneaten shrimp. You can only imagine. But anyway, sorry, I digress. So another big thing, and you'll see this throughout this, is when these facilities were built, there was a lot of building codes that weren't in place. But the way the rules are, when you start to dig in these facilities, you have to upgrade them to meet modern building codes. And a lot of it has to do with being explosion proof and operator safety. And so there's a lot of HVAC upgrades in here related for ventilation purposes to meet the building code requirements, so that when the staff goes in there, we know that they can come out without dying or asphyxiating or things like that. And then also to either put in explosion-proof devices, or in like one of the case here, as I'll talk about, prevent you to have to put explosion-proof devices in there by ventilating it properly. So if you ventilate it enough, you don't have to do that. And that holds true in, specifically, there's these, where the pumps are, the drywall pumps. If you remember if you've been out there, you walk down the flights of stairs, the pumps are down there, the motors are up on top. That room is actually a rated space, an explosion rated space, as it is now. But if you go in there, all the light switches are just regular old light switches and regular light fixtures. And so the choice is you either gut all of that and replace all of that, or what we're going to do is ventilate it better, so you don't have to go through and replace all of those fixtures in there. Okay, so there's a lot of HVAC upgrades related to that. We're also going to physically separate that space, because a door is not physical separation in the building code requirements. So when you're in that structure to where those pumps are, there's a door there. Well, that rated space is therefore connected to all the rest of the building, so we're going to take that interior door out, block it, and put an exterior door in. So then that place is all separated from the rest of the building, and then we don't have to super ventilate the rest of the building the same with that. So there's several things like that in here, where there's HVAC upgrades, fan replacements, damper upgrades. It's just one of these things when you dig into modify an existing facility. These facilities were never built to these building codes 4 years ago because they didn't exist, but we have to upgrade them to that now. So there's stuff related to that happening in the screen room and the influent dry well pumping room as well. And that's all in that building. So if you switch to the second page, I can keep going. One of the things we're doing with this whole treatment plant is getting rid of blowers and diffusers. One of the things, talking to the staff, they don't prefer blowers and diffused air for the various different things, and we're going to do that mechanically. But one of the things that we're not really touching that does need air is the aerated grit system. So we're going to have to put in a small blower for that when we take out the bigger blowers we're going to be getting rid of. Kind of a minor thing, but that's what's listed on the top of D there. One of the next big things we're doing is a flow equalization basin. So that's these big things here. One of the things that it really does need is some automation. So what's going to happen is when the flow meter reads a flow that's higher than the plant, well, whatever number we set it at, but realistically the clarifiers can handle, it's going to automatically pump that excess flow up to those basins. Right now that's manually done, and it's really not effective, because you have to be there at the right time to open that valve, and that's just hard to do, and really impossible to do. You have to stand there the whole time. So it's going to be completely automated to pump excess flow into those basins, and then it's going to automatically have a drain back into the plant to be treated. So it's a temporary holding facility, and really the benefit of that is it avoids us having to build another one of these big clarifiers up here. So you have those basins. The automating of that helps us to have to eliminate having to build another clarifier. And so the big treatment part of this, the really biological treatment part of this, is building an oxidation ditch, and that's this here. We actually just snipped an aerial from another project similar to this, and to throw it on there to give you an idea. And whether that goes exactly right there, or it goes down here, or goes over there, we'll figure that out. But it's going to be generally up top, on top of the hill. And that's really replacing what's going on in the outer rings of these package plants here. So what happens now is you guys blow air in here that gives the bugs the air it needs to breathe and eat all the organic material. But we're going to do that a different way here in this oxidation dish. And I believe oxidation dish has been discussed a few different times. But the flexibility with the number of rings you can bring online, depending on what Sensient's doing, and then being able to split flow to 2 clarifiers is really a lot of flexibility benefit for the utility. Right now, if you want both these clarifiers online, you got to have both these package plants online. Doing it this way with a splitter box and multiple rings really has a lot of flexibility. How many rings are online? How many clarifiers are online there? And the way air is added to this system is there's discs, and basically air is splashed into the wastewater to provide the air there. And there'll be all kinds of instrumentation to control how much air you're adding to it, so you're not adding too much and wasting money with electricity. So that's what this called, this oxidation ditch is what that's called, and that's a big cast in place concrete structure. There'll be a lot of rebar in there. There'll be a lot of poured concrete in that structure up there. So that's kind of the new. That's the one big new structure that we're putting out there.
Instrument wise, you guys don't have DO probes right now, so your blowers are just, you know, full force air. But with the oxidation dish, we'll have DO probes, and so if your load is low, your DO will be able to go higher, and so you can turn down the aerators.
It's all an efficiency thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Right now, those blowers is full bore, whether they need to or not, and that's just wasted money, frankly. The next thing is these package plants. So what the real benefit of this option, we've talked about before, is we have tanks here that are in good shape. We can maintain these, but we can use them for different purposes. And really what it's going to turn into is sludge digestion and sludge storage. So one of the big deficiencies you guys have in the facility is you don't have much sludge storage. You're hauling constantly. You're paying a premium to haul sludge. How often do you guys haul it now? Every week? Right. So what this is going to give you is you wouldn't have to haul it every 6 months, or even less often than that. And the benefit of that is that you can haul sludge, or whoever hauls sludge for you can do it right when it's land application season. You're going to get the best price. Instead of taking sludge to go pay another treatment plant, all you're going to do is pay the hauler to go apply it to the land directly, right? So you get a definite cost savings from doing that. So there's going to be, in the outer rings here are going to be this one here or this one, depending on what we want to do. One of these part rings is going to be a digester, and the rest of this ring, and all of this one is going to be sludge storage. And it's more than 180 days of storage that you'll have. Give you some flexibility of when you have to haul and when you can haul it. Okay. And then there's going to be just various upgrades in there. We're going to put the sludge pumps in there. We're going to do mechanical aeration in there. We're going to slope the floors so they can drain it out. There's a lot of miscellaneous stuff that's happening. We're getting rid of the airlift pumping, since you're not going to have blowers. That's going to be far more efficient pumping with pumps as opposed to with airlift. It's more precise. You can really return the bugs to the process that you want at the rate you want them. Far more efficient for that. So that's largely the modifications to those 2 package plants. The 2 clarifiers are staying in there, but we're basically modifying the outsides of those package plants. You could flip the page into page 3. So then the other structure we're building up here, and that's this gray box here, is a chemical building. But there's actually 2 rooms in there. One room is going to be the chemical, so we're getting rid of the underground storage tank. We're relocating the chemical pumps from down in the screen room, and we're going to put them in that building up here. And the idea with the building here is this provides a nice access for the chemical truck, tanker truck, to pull right up, fill, and then turn and go right out, right up there. And then the other room in there is going to be an electrical room. So all the starters, the gear, the control for the motors here, and the motors we're adding here for the pumps, and the various other motors are going to be powered out of here. We're going to pull main power from the main service here and bring 3-phase power up to that building there. And then, since we're going to have electrical up there, I'm sure we'll put the SCADA right up there in that building so you can access control from there, or whether you're down at the main service building too. So, and that's just another part of this project. You guys invested in a nice SCADA system several years ago. All the things that aren't in it now, that we're upgrading, we're gonna pull all that into the SCADA system so you can control that all from one access point at the treatment facility or wherever you are, wherever you have an access point for it. So that's gonna be pulled into there. The sand filter system, so the utility put some money into replacing the media and some of the nozzles in that a year or two ago. And that's great, we're gonna keep that, but what does need to be replaced is the control system for it. That's the original 40-year-old control system. We're gonna replace those panels and pull that control into the SCADA so they can control that from one spot as well, where they can't do that now. And then there's gonna be some valve replacements and gates and such there, some lightings, another HVAC piece of equipment in that room too needs to be replaced. The next thing is the boiler heating system. That boiler has been needed replacement, and I think it's been identified before. So all of that boiler and the heat pumps and the recirculation pumps and control valves, all of that's going to be replaced. That's all been original to that facility, so that needs to be replaced. But all the unit heaters, all those are fine. So that's why we're sticking with boiler heat. We don't want to completely put electric heat in there, force heat everywhere. You got a good boiler system, or you got the guts of it. You just need to have the new boiler.
They won't go with a low mass boiler on something like that. They're going to go with another cast iron boiler.
I don't know. I don't know exactly.
I would sure encourage to stick with a cast iron boiler.
Okay.
Well, look at, we got 40 years out of the first one, You go with those low mass, those are water heaters.
Yeah.
Those low mass boilers, the 10 years you get out of them, you'd be putting another one in there.
Those are the exact things we'll figure out, but that's good to know. Yep. Okay. The potable water system, we talked about this before. They struggle with iron a lot from that well out there in the lab and that stuff, so we're going to put a 2-stage softening system in there to help with iron removal and the staining that happens out there. Where all the water comes in, the backflow preventers, there's a tie-in to the plant effluent water there too, in case they need extra. All of that, valves and stuff, is going to be replaced. Some of it's way above your head, and you can't really get to it. It's pretty old and broken, so some of that's going to be replaced. We're not sure if we need to add another storage tank. I think if we do, it would be up at the chemical building, just a small pneumatic tank to feed basically the drench shower. So when you have a chemical room, you got to have an eye wash and shower up there. And if we need more point of storage there, we'd put a small one there, and probably with a water heater, because you got to temper that drench shower water. So that's some things we'll figure out, but we're planning for that. And then the final effluent water system. So you have that big storage tank that basically pumps effluent water from the plant, and they use it for the screen, for washing, for all kinds of plant uses. We're going to replace that tank. The thing we haven't figured out though is that tank got in there before the roof went on. So we have to figure out how to get it out, and if we're going to be able to get a new one in there, and how we're going to do that. So whether we get it in there, or maybe we build it in the adjacent room, because the thing we had is because the generator's coming out of that room. There's going to be a couple big holes in that wall, and maybe we could fit something through there. But that's some of the stuff we'll have to figure out how we get it in there. But we're going to replace it exactly where it is. We're TBD. We're going to be figuring that out. But
Back it up to the potable water. Did we do any water quality tests on that well out there? Because that is not a characteristic. We got such high iron that comes out of there like orange juice, and that's not a characteristic of the neighboring properties that I work on and what have you. I'm just wondering, is
we could.
changing the depth of that well or whatever, you might be improving your water quality. Ross, you remember, didn't we check?
That water used to be better than what it is now, from what
Yeah.
they say. It's still drinkable out there. Now the system's different.
So, I mean, it might be something that might be worth looking into, and,
You make a note on that, Matt?
yeah, it's just not a characteristic of the surrounding properties.
Okay.
I mean, go right down the road, Nails Farms and stuff like that, we don't have that kind of iron coming out of the pipes there.
Yeah.
Like I said, it just seems like unless we're in a bad vein or something.
Right. Okay.
It's a shame to have to put a lot of water conditioning equipment in it if it's just a matter of maybe drilling a little bit deeper, or, or dropping the pipe down, because that's down 300 feet out there, isn't it?
Pretty deep, I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's a good note. We'll look at that.
How's your water? Well, you're not too far away. you
There's
know.
some iron in it, but.
Yeah, yeah, well, every
Right.
rural well has some iron in it, but it shouldn't turn your toilet bowl orange, you know.
Or your dishwasher, or
Yeah,
your,
right.
okay.
Food for thought.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then the maintenance garage, like I think we've talked about that. Planning up to 2,500 square feet, and as fancy as it needs to be, I guess is the term there. And then related, probably doing a bathroom remodel to the existing bathroom. And then all the related electrical and control, like I touched on this earlier, but maybe I didn't in this talk here. We're gonna relocate, so that blower room now, we're gonna relocate and consolidate all the new electrical control, the new service, this transfer switch, the gear for that building is all gonna be relocated along the wall in that blower room. And then that's gonna refeed all the equipment from there. So that's gonna be all consolidated in there. We're gonna leave the backwash blower for the sand filter, the compressor that's in there. We're gonna have that little blower for the aerated grit in there, but then it's gonna be largely an electrical room that's gonna be there. So all that gear is gonna be consolidated into that room there. And then the generator replacement as well. And there's another note is, there's a lot of words I typed here on the bottom of page 4. But what that really means is, sometimes when you go into these existing buildings, you start replacing stuff, well, let's just replace all the conduit, or replace all the plumbing, or replace all the ductwork. Our intent is not do that. Our intent is to only replace what needs to be replaced to relocate something. So, like if we're gonna put electrical gear on this wall, there's a plumbing pipe here, well, we'll relocate that. The intent is not to replace all the plumbing on the walls and all that. That's what that's trying to say. We're only gonna do the modification necessary to do the upgrades we talked about there, is the intent with that. So, that's the scope of work. It's a more detailed than what was in the facility plan, but it meets the intent of the facility plan. I believe the construction cost estimate's about $9.5 million for that work, and so based on that scope of work, we've developed a scope of work to do that design and bidding. And we're talking about over 6,100 hours of MSA staff time. I'm estimating about 25 different MSA staff people are gonna touch the project. It's probably gonna be a full-time job, for him, for sure. But probably about 4 or 5 people to get this done. But then, like I said, up to 25 people, other people have hours on it, and we're talking about process engineers, structural engineers, architects, HVAC engineers, plumbing engineers, doing the topographic survey, etc. there. So it's basically every discipline at MSA that we do that all in-house. We have all that staff in-house, and so those hours are put together based on my estimate to do the work. And where do I get that from? Other similar projects we've done, I've looked back, okay, how many hours has this taken us to do this work? And then it's simply a pretty simple math equation of this many hours. These are the bill out rates for each of these people, and that's where the total comes from for that. So these are the design and bidding services. This doesn't include construction. I don't like to include in construction all at once because we're probably a year out before construction would happen. And I'd rather wait till that time till we have a better idea of what the project is, who the contractor is, because that really does dictate our level of effort on construction. Depending on if you get a really, really good contractor or just a middle of the road contractor, that does dictate how much time we spend on it. So I'd like to wait till we know that before we contract for those construction related services. And that would be about a year from now. So that's the scope of it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I've done a lot of talking, but that's kind of where my summary of the project and the level of effort for us to really do the design. So the other part I wanted to add to that is these costs for MSA were in the facility plan, in the total project cost. These are not above and beyond. And actually, when we do the plan, we put a percentage on there for engineering. And once I added up the hours, we're actually, honestly, fairly a lot less than what we had budgeted for. So it's less than the budget than what we had included there for the design. I think we had actually budgeted about 1.1 or 1.2 million, and we're just above 800,000 there for the design on that. So I always have to start before we know the level of effort. We put a percentage in, and then I do the math to figure out what it actually is going to take us to do it. And thankfully in this case it was substantially less than that, what we had originally budgeted, so. One of the questions that comes up inherently with this is how do we pay for this until we get the loan? And typically what happens with these very large projects is obviously no one can budget for this kind of thing, is you go out and get interim financing from the local bank, and all of those costs are eligible for when you go to close on the loan later. So any interim financing costs you get from the bank, all of that's all eligible to be rolled into the 20-year loan package. And so typically how that works is we'll submit the design at the end of September, and typically the earliest you can close is like February, March, so like a year from now is when you could close, and then any cost that you've incurred up until that time would be rolled into it, into the closing. Typically what a lot of people do is they just go get a line of credit for it, and they just only take out what they need to for any of the costs they have before they close on it. And we would, as part of this as well, I forgot to mention is all the funding services. So the funding application, all the assistance to help identify and put together the rates and all the things that they need to do up through the application submittal and working till the loan closing is included in here. And so our funding people will get to know Lori very well and work with her because it's a process. It's a pretty, and as you could tell, as you could imagine, going for a government loan, there's a lot of red tape involved with it. So we would help Lori through all that whole process and help with the interim financing, help you get that set up, make sure, because there's some particular ways you have to set it up so it's eligible. Nothing crazy, but just a few things that you need to be aware of. So that's kind of my spiel. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Does this facility take into account if Juneau should grow exponentially, have lots of new building growth and all, new homes, not new business that require additional water, but new homes?
That was projected in the facility plan. The DNR has a fairly rigid way that we need to project it based on what the DOA projects Juneau's going to grow, and so that's included in there. I will say further, if let's say Juneau adds 200 homes, I have no problem thinking we'll be able to accommodate that. An individual home is really not much of an impact on a treatment facility. I would be much more concerned if, like we talked about with Sensient, or if a cheese factory was going to come to town. But in that case, well then they're going to pay for it, and then you would just have more expansion onto what you're planning. But there was no indication of that, and that's hard to predict. Those things can change, but yeah.
The layout of this facility as you have it here, you said you're not sure whether it'll be here, where exactly
Yep.
it'll be. But is that also in the thought process of layout of that potential to have a cheese factory come into Juneau?
Sure.
For potentially?
Yep. I mean, one thing nice, you guys made a great decision 40 years ago to buy a plot of land where you did. You've got plenty of space to expand on this facility, more than it'd take a significant change to have to even go outside the current fence of the treatment plant. There's a lot of space out there.
They really like to mow lawn.
And they do really, well, they don't have as much of that.
Just kidding.
You can add another ring? Can you add another ring? Is it a possibility?
You could potentially, yeah. I mean, we've seen, on our plans, a lot of times we show like a pipe and then there's a future stub, right? And so we talked about having provisions for possibly a selector tank being added in the future. So we just have to make sure that there's extra space around the whole thing. You could go as far as, building out footings and stuff like that, but to be honest, I've seen places where they've been talking about growth forever and ever and ever, and then it never happens, and you have the tank sitting there that's empty. And so,
Yeah, this will easily accommodate residential development. I can confidently say that.
What kind of commercial development should we stay away from?
Cheese plant.
We got ways.
We got food. Where you at? A wet industry.
Yeah.
A wet industry.
you don't necessarily have to stay away from it. It's just should start a conversation.
Right.
That's where I'd want to be involved.
Because Sensient might be doing something different, like just your I&I might be lower, right? Your infiltration and your stormwater might be lower, so
Any kind of food processing. That's where my antenna goes up and say, oh, we should talk, what does that mean? What does that mean?
What about plastics and molding and stuff like that? Does that, you know, they
Depends on how much water they're gonna use.
They commonly use water for cooling, but does that affect the treatment process or anything?
Cooling water's not gonna affect it. In cooling water, they're not gonna wanna probably pay to have you guys treat it anyway, they'd probably figure out a different way to have their own discharge for cooling water. It'd be, like I said, cheese, you see a lot of these flavoring plants, Rosendale had that, what was it called? Can't remember, Power Packaging. They have a flavor, like, where they make like Gatorade mixes and stuff, like that's the stuff, that's his BOD in it, that's his sugar, sugar water, you know, stuff like that, that's where I would wanna know about it.
Slaughterhouse?
Slaughterhouse, yeah, for sure, you know, rendering waste, for sure.
Seems like there's always they're always looking out here for that.
A lot of the small, I don't know how big you're talking about, so a lot of the smaller ones just store and have somebody haul it for them,
Yeah.
as opposed to pay to treat it,
There's
but
always wash down and byproducts
Wash
are
down.
gonna wind up finding its way into the treatment plant.
they cross-connect, yeah, the floor drains get connected, and, you know,
Absolutely.
but those are the kind of things we'd wanna know about, yeah.
Okay.
Problem's not gonna go away. We've been very lucky we were able to labor the one along as long as we have. But it's kind of a, talk about line of credit, it's hard to get money for a business that loses money.
Yeah.
Treat waste is not a money maker by any means, you know, so.
Just a must-do.
We just don't want to be scaring that potential home builder to not even consider our community if our rates are so high. So
Right.
it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, comments? You did a good job.
Thank you. There's obviously something too, as the process moves along, we'll be here periodically giving you updates. We'll be obviously talking to Alex and Peggy and Peter quite a bit and doing the detail, but we'll be here periodically to give the commission updates and about where we're at in the schedule and what we've, oh, well, you know, we had this here, but we're gonna move it here, just so you guys, that type of thing, so.
We do cost estimates along the way too, to make sure that we're on budget, right? Like if we're expecting something a lot higher, we can start talking about it, right?
And with,
Why is it higher?
and with prices, you know, they've been going up, so the next phase on that will be, we'll get through the preliminary design, what we call the 30% design, once we really nail down how big everything is, what type of equipment we're gonna use, and we'll come back with a new cost estimate. And then we can say, let's just say it's higher. Do we wanna go with a higher, bigger project, or do we wanna potentially eliminate something? That would be the point to decide that. Like, maybe the maintenance garage is not 2,500 square feet, maybe it's 1,500 square feet. That's the point, to make those kind of budgetary decisions after that 30% design. But, get ahead of myself, but that's kinda how that'll work.
Right now, what you're wanting us to approve is $822,000.
Correct. Correct.
So that we can even get to that.
So we even get to that stage, correct.
Okay,
Whatever we need to do that.
that's where we're at now. What is your pleasure?
When we talk about combining costs, we've got some pretty significant water, wastewater projects there in the east side of town, so we're gonna do a borrowing. Combining this with that is probably go big or go home, I guess is what it really boils down to. You know, we're on track to do that work, there's no two ways about it. And I don't think we have a definite finance plan in place for that. So I'm guessing incorporating this in with that only makes sense. And I know it's probably gonna be paid for out of different accounts, but as far as going out for any kind of funding or borrowing, how is the bonding on these kind of finance packages there? You know, we've commonly dealt with Baird for all the city
You'll need to get a bond
issues.
counsel
Right.
to do it. I'm sure they're fine. But so the way the DNR loan works is, this is obviously, Baird will deal with all this, but the DNR loan, they buy down the interest rate. So the interest rate is 60% of what the market rate is. So it's that plus the grant. So, like I said, you get the interim financing set up, and then all that is rolled into the loan, and when that's closed on for the DNR, and then that's a 20-year loan, fixed loan. There's a lot of nice things about it, but they don't really discourage any prepayment, because they rely on that loan payment to keep that
Yeah.
fund solvent, so they don't want to see a bunch of prepayment in that program. But it's a fixed 20-year loan. The grant is actually called a principal forgiveness, so they basically just lock what principal off that you go out for a loan for, and then it's paid back through debt service, and the rate's paid for that debt service over 20 years, over a 20-year period, at a fixed interest rate that you close on now.
It's essential to get locked in, because we all know what's going on in the world right now.
Right.
The costs are, I mean, they're talking about mortgages going up 5 times during this fiscal year. So, those dollars all translate to the same thing here too, so I don't think you can do it any time too soon here.
Greg, you said that your people will help us with, or help Lori with processing of paperwork to get funding and that type of thing?
Every step of the way, yep.
Even for this beginning step?
Yes, absolutely.
You will.
Yes, we will. Yes, all of that. They usually, early in the process, 1 or 2 of the funding gals on our team will come here and just help Lori, because they need a bunch of utility paperwork and count information and all that. They come and help her work through it, straighten it out, get what they need to get, walk her through the process, all of that. Yep. It helped
Is there any billable hours on this for designing this around sensing and the logistics and basically everything for that? I mean, is there hours that are designated towards the design built in for Sensient's capacity, numbers?
Because of them being
Because of
on
them.
our.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if they're paying for 34%, I would say 34% of it is sentient. Relatively, I mean, that's approximate, but yeah.
Because I'm sure you had additional man-hours tied up with the way it was executed, and
I mean, that was all, Tom mentioned in his email today, we've been billing that separate sentient time to them, to Baker Tilly. That's how it was set up. We were working for them on anything specific to sentient towards that contract execution.
we definitely want to recover those hours from them.
Yep.
I would move forward with this action, for MSA's contract for design and bidding services for our wastewater treatment facility upgrade as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Cheryl, second by Ross to move forward with the design and bidding services, right? Is there any more discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Way to go.
All right.
Hit the ground running.
Make
See
sure
you
you
guys very soon.
Systems, the Cassell upgrade there, is that the normal upgrade or is that the portion
That
that?
was the new, changing from Cassell to Connect.
Okay, thank
And
you.
adding the payroll.
Okay, that, I was wanting to make sure where that was coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is Gas Flowit? servicing?
Just servicing our cranes out at the treatment plant.
Okay. Thank you. I'll move to approve the, vouchers and checks.
Is there a second?
No second.
Motion by Cheryl, seconded by Bart to approve the vouchers and the check. Any discussions or questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed, motion is carried. Review prior month income statement. Anybody have any questions or on that at all? Council acts affecting the utility. Resolution 70/2021 approved to amend personnel policy handbook. 205 holidays.
Mac, what would you have wanted changed with this, or how would you have wanted this, differently? Maybe I can give some history on what happened. We had someone that was hired, like, beginning of December, I think it was, or November, anyway, immediately has a day of vacation or a time off, and it's like, wait a second, you haven't even put any time in yet to call this a benefit. The other question that was brought up was, is it really a holiday? It's not really a holiday that we treat it where you have to be at work the day before and the day after. So that conversation was had. So I'm asking now, and I apologize, I did not think about, the side here of the separate personnel committee. So I'm partially to blame for that as well. How would you have liked this handled?
I wouldn't have any problem with saying that if it would have been 6 months or something like that. They have to be here 6 months before they get that day, rather than a year.
Okay. So
But
you
it would-
preferred 6 months?
It would have been nice to be able to discuss that.
Okay.
I mean, we supposed to follow that book.
Well, the question is, are we going to follow the book? Because the reality is, if we're not gonna follow the book at the commission here, you could say, you get a benefit day after 6 months, but then you're gonna have to write your own, we're gonna have to write our own policy book, so that's where I'm asking consistency across the whole board for everybody.
I would have liked to been, at least know the reasoning why. Bart and I were sitting at the meeting that night, and this was dropped on us. We knew nothing about this.
I didn't even know we had a dress code.
This book is available to anyone and everyone, this policy book, and if we're sitting on committees, we better know this book. That's our own fault, in my estimation. If you don't know the policies within the handbook that we're using as a city, if you need one of these, you
I
can get
think
it
we
from
need to get
City
one
Hall.
here.
You bet.
When was the last time that was updated? That, I mean, that's the next one.
Ooh, revised March 9th, 2020, is what I have on this one. So I know there's a couple things
Yeah,
since that
changed,
time,
yeah.
yes. I don't have the most recent, I shouldn't say that. I have the most recent at home, but I don't have it here.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, yeah.
But, so, yeah, I would have, to do it, rather than say a full year, I mean, to say you can't have a day, you can't take a personal day unless, all you're gonna do is create people that, when they want that one day that they gotta do something,
Well, they still have their vacation days and they still have that they can use as far as they earn.
They can't take vacation days until after 6 months, I believe, don't you,
Right.
So, so if you do the 6-month thing, that would have been, to me, that'd been better than a year.
Okay.
I will finish with this, when we get into reports of officials. Before we do that, do you wanna take up that part of the, about Kylie's 15 days rather than now or later?
I guess I don't know what
Would-
gets done with it now, because she's already been told that she can have it, but according to the policy book, she doesn't get it, and so that's where I'm,
Is it, I mean, that was what we decided, it had to come to full commission.
is it on here?
No, it doesn't come to commission.
It's not on
because
here as
Doesn't?
an actionable item.
But Ross and I were discussing it, we looked at, she gave us 3 months' notice that she was gonna leave. And she wants to train her help, her replacement. That was my thing, that she was really,
Conscientious. Very, she was just very conscientious about her.
yeah, and I thought,
Resignation.
let her reward her for it, you know. I mean, even if you gave her the 15 days and prorated it, it wouldn't be that, I wouldn't have any problem with that. Because my theory, when reading the personnel thing, if you earn 1 year to take the next. So just because you're a month short of that 5 years, you're still earning vacation up until that time, up until you leave. So you have a percentage of that 5 years, of that 5 weeks of vacation.
That is the way we were told upon hiring, is that we do accrue for the year, the following year. So as your
It had
vacation.
been that way and it got changed, I remember that, because it was, what do you mean, if I end up terminating before the year and I've used all my vacation, they were pulling it back from your final paycheck, and it's like, wait a second, so you're right, we do accrue it. The question is, the 15 days, according to the policy, is that she would not accrue 15 days until after she had completed the 5 years. And I have nothing against Kylie, please, that's not my purpose in asking this at all. It's a matter of, what are we following? Because it creates conflict when we say, we're gonna follow this policy, and yet, no, we're gonna do this for this person. If we wanna thank Kylie and we wanna give her an extra money type of thing, that we're gonna give her a gift that way, fine, but I think we better be real careful when we go against policy. That's my point of view on it, so.
Cheryl, before you mentioned about how that you do accrue, or right now, she would be accruing towards her 10 days vacation.
That's my understanding.
Right, but if at 5 years she gets 15 days, wouldn't she be accruing towards the 15 days, not the 10 days?
It says after completion, she has to complete 5 years before she gets the 15.
Okay. Yeah, that's just kind of,
It's verbiage for one thing, but
Right.
it's,
Cause really
Right.
the
we all gotta
Accruing when you get
understand that,
5
that's.
days.
Cause really the
15 days and 5
understanding
years.
is your 4th year, you're accruing to the 15 days. You're accruing 15 days during your 4th year.
right, that's what I
That's-
understand.
But you're not taking 15 days vacation during that 4th year anytime until.
No,
No.
you're taking it during the 5th year, cause you're accruing for
You're earning
15
it the
days.
4th.
That's just how it's always been, it's been told to us
Because if
as
she
an
would-
employee.
If
It
it would
just
be
don't make sense
accruing
to
from
me.
the 3rd year to the 4th year, and she leaves a month short of the 4th year, she'd be
You never find
accruing
that in
on the
private
10
sector,
days.
I can tell you that.
So if she's accruing towards the 15 days.
It's the way it was over there.
Well, it's,
Would it be-
my thinking is, when I read this, she gets 15 days of paid vacation after 5 years of continuous service. She works the full 5th year at 10 days. She does not get the 15 days until her 6th year, because she has got to complete.
That's what I'm
5
looking
years.
at it.
Yeah.
This That's another way of looking at it.
But I got 15 days from like 3 to 5 days.
When you
Starting
went
at
to your
15.
fifth year. So
it's
that's
starting
another
at 15.
inconsistency, I'm like, okay, we're gonna go there. Across
How
the
do you-
board.
how do you
And-
do it?
And again, the utility commission functions differently, and I get that, but
I get both sides, I
Yeah.
understand Max and I definitely understand
yep,
your side.
exactly.
Unless we wanna give her something for letting us know 3 months in advance.
Give her a bonus for equivalent to that. Do that.
I'm gonna ask, are you gonna set that as precedent then?
Not precedent setting. We've done
But it-
that before too.
Yeah.
We've done that. This does not set a precedence.
We've done what before?
That we've done some things with, and it does not set a precedent. I can't remember when. But I was the president at the time. Can't remember.
Yes, I got that on the list.
So, let's, can we, under new business, handle that and say we'll have another meeting
Sure.
to,
I'm fine with that,
I mean, I don't wanna create a havoc either, so. All right.
What are we putting on new business?
Friend, we'll discuss the 15-day vacation under new business at an additional meeting. Additional, we can do it under personnel or full commission. Hmm?
Might be better in the full position.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay,
Get it ironed out, but presently the utility has agreed to abide by that handbook. And I know there's been some extension for hiring people, you know, that you might waiver from that for trying to fill the skilled position, so there's been some latitude given for that. But I'm thinking when you gotta stick to that book for these other kind of things, you know, otherwise you're really gonna be, unless utility wanna start their own book, have to, but, it always creates an issue there, everybody wants to be treated the same in most respects, but, I guess when I read it, I never even thought about Cheryl's version or Dick's version. I just thought, hey, you get the 5-year mark, now you got 15 days coming throughout your next work year. Never did I think that you'd back it up into the 4th year or anything like that.
No, it's not backed up, it's just, you don't get those 15 days, it's thought as that 4th year you're working towards getting
Building
those
that up.
15
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Given the 15 days, the
Day.
day of your anniversary.
or
But the
But
way
you have
Cheryl
like
reads it
5
is really, I
years.
think, the intent of that policy. That you actually gotta work there 5 complete years before you get the
So
third.
you get it on the
third
60 year
week, so.
anniversary, on the start of the 60.
Yeah. That's almost the way that thing reads when she read it out loud there, when you're thinking about it without any bias or without looking at a condition that you're trying to remedy right now. I'm thinking,
we haven't been doing it that way either.
right.
That I push in that direction.
So,
Maybe need something that needs to come up with personnel as well, just personnel as a whole.
yeah,
Hey, how is this interpreted, how is it being applied? Because I think that's where some of the confusion is, how is it applied?
I would say,
Versus the verbiage
I
of
would
it.
say a good first start is tomorrow night after our council meeting, you do a sidebar with our city attorney and ask him how to do it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I would ask you to do that.
So, resolution 72, 2021, approve approve sewer rate amendments for industrial service. All right. Consumption and loss.
Outstanding.
What's the change?
The water pipe.
Pete, there's
Water
that-
pipes.
Is that pipe still there?
I don't know, it's not.
Sweet.
There was a gash in it about this long. That was the one on Main Street.
And the pressure behind it is intense, so
Yeah.
Go back to storm sewer?
No,
Why
it's
not?
ground. We've run the sinkhole for 15 years. And we fixed one, at the end of the month, so, we'll go down even more for next one.
Steve Alderman is at home. No, that was on the street side, cause you had to undermine, you were on the,
That was in the parking lot.
in the parking lane, and their service valve is in the terrace.
Yes, they do that.
Solely responsible for that. You ought to send a bill to the county for half, just.
Goodness, yes.
Don't stir the pot.
I don't know, I mean, that's a lot of I mean, you're sending them a bill for all that water for 15 years, or however long that thing's been leaking.
What'd you figure, 20,000 gallons?
Oh, it was, don't have the numbers.
500,000 is
Something like
minimum.
that, yeah.
I think we came up with 835,000 or
Yeah.
something.
I'll still never understand our logic on our service rules, that the customer's only responsible out to the shut off, but yet their sewer main is all the way out to the main. Their sewer ladder, that just works my mind on why one is one way and why one is the other way. You know, it just doesn't make any sense on how we incorporate that. It's even a tougher hardship for the homeowner to be able to replace the sewer lateral, you know, especially underneath a street like that. You know, can you imagine the cost you've got? I mean, you look at the numbers that Town and Country charged us to do, and we were lucky, because it was all in the parking lane. We didn't have to arrange for traffic detouring or shutdown or anything like that. Those costs could have been tripled, easily, so just food for thought.
Delinquent customers totals. April is coming.
We've seen it a lot worse than this. I mean, we still want people to pay their bills, but we've seen it a lot worse than this.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
all right. Reports of officials. Utility accountant.
We wanted to bring up the possibility of, taking over our own accounts payable. Right now, what we do is, we receive an invoice, I quote it to the account, we send everything up to City Hall, they input it into, Cassell, the system, and they do the check run. And then we would get our copies of our checks and invoices back. We're not quite understanding why it needs to go up there, why we can't just print our own checks. So we are doing start to finish, with issues that we have are the, invoices and check copies don't come back. So we don't have any records of what's getting paid, except by running reports. Kylie did some the other day that she said she worked on it for 3 or 4 hours to figure out, she gotta run a report to find out what check number, what invoice number, look at the invoice, write the check number on our copy of our invoice to be able to file it, whatever. So it's just a kind of a loose way of, we send stuff up there and we don't know if it gets paid or not, unless, you know, sometimes we get copies back, and that process kinda changed when Megan took over. Sean, when Veronica was there, she used to make sure we got our copies back, and then, that kind of fell by the wayside.
Has there been communication in
Oh, yes.
regards to, and what's the response that you're getting?
They're
We-
too busy.
We talked to we have a monthly meeting, just a quick one with Kay as well.
Yep.
Rose.
Yep.
And very productive meeting, and that was one of the things that was brought up and both agreed upon by City Hall and us. It's like, it's touching too many hands just to review, come back. And we've, in the past, not the current city clerk or people that are working there now, but in the past, we've had late payments.
Yeah.
Multiple for 1 year especially. And it's one of those things it's already getting coded out. It should just be done internally and just be done instead of,
It'd be
we
a
have
lot
so
more
many
efficient.
paper copies going back and forth.
Right.
Obviously, things are gonna,
Oh, they get dislocated,
Yeah.
dislocated and not.
Cause right now, I get the invoices, I make copies, we send up the originals, but they have all the paperwork, all the supporting documentation of POs and whatever, packing slips and stuff. I don't make copies of all of that. So then everything, all the originals go up there, and when the accounting firm now, like with the audit, they're asking for all these copies of invoices, and I don't have them, and so then I have to call back up there and say, hey, I need copies of these invoices. It's just.
What is their response to this change?
they want it.
They want the
Megan,
change
yeah,
there,
the first
okay.
day I talked to Megan, she asked me why we don't do that, and I didn't know why we don't do our own. So she was the one that actually somewhat brought it up.
Used to be that way, didn't it?
I explained that last time, that yeah, it used to be too, the utility used to cut their own payroll checks too. But I did give them a history lesson that I can remember when I first got on the utility commission and that went away, was that was a Baker Tilly or Virtual Kraus decision that they don't want accounts payable in more than one person's hands for a utility of this size or a city of this size. They want just one person. They can be cross-trained with somebody else, but they only want one accounts payable department for the city and utility because of if we're a lot bigger, that'd be another story. I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not defending it one way or the other. But if memory serves me, that was, because I think I probably inquired about
Yeah.
it, because when I joined the utility commission, years after I had worked for the commission, I know we always received a check that was for cut for Juneau Utility Commission, happened to be a green check, and all the city checks were yellow. And so, we did have a person in your capacity that used to do all the payroll checks for the city, or for the utility, and another one sitting up at City Hall doing them all for the city. So, like I said, I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but when I inquired about it, I was told that that Virtual Kraus recommended that only one person be doing payroll, one person be doing accounts payable for the city of Juneau.
Segregation of duty.
There you go.
So we don't have anyone that has accessibility to commit fraud, make it more impossible for them to.
Right.
But there are
So we
times
do
and
have-
places that you,
Yeah.
like you have a small group of people, yeah.
And Megan coming from Wapon's utility, they might have a segregation there, because they're big enough that they probably can. But, yeah, they're generating a lot more checks a month than what the city of Juneau is.
When we started our audit today, and I didn't get a chance to ask Baker Tilly about if there was reasoning for the separation or non-separation.
I mean, they might come up with a solution, yeah, we see no problem you doing accounts payable, but wages should all stay under city hall.
Oh, I don't wanna do payroll.
Oh, no, you're taking it all. You're not gonna be able to pick and choose, girl.
I had the experience that I could, but I'd prefer not.
Yeah, really, it's just the accounts payable, because that's where things are lost and
Right.
it's late fees.
Well, you're paying, she's writing bills every week now, right?
Yeah.
She is
Right.
paying checks every week.
Yeah.
And she wants fine details, but I gotta write down description of what it's for and where, and drop it off on her desk and she knows what it's for and makes it to the right account. But it's gonna be nice just to turn around, write the check and send out the invoice and get it done.
But so far you haven't, with the new regime, you haven't
No, we
had
haven't
late
had any.
payments or anything like that, or
No,
discounts that were missed because you didn't get them paid by the 10th or anything.
Right, cause she is paying him every week.
She's not overwhelmed, but I think she wants to get, she sees the exchange of so many hands, she's seeing, okay, this is one thing that I need potentially, why are we touching so many hands? It doesn't make sense, which we agree.
Other than segregation of duties and making sure you don't have that opportunity. And our auditors could very well, will you
Well, we
ask
have-
the auditors
Yeah, I
to
think
check
that's
for
what
that?
needs to happen.
And we
Yeah,
were,
I
we were
know.
planning on it.
I
just
planned
started.
on it, but I was
Yeah.
busy getting ready for the audit yesterday, so.
That's the next
Um,
step actually that needs to happen is bringing up the auditors.
And we can do an internal, we certainly can do an internal approval process or whatever, and I would code the invoices, Kelly or her replacement will put them in, and then I run the checks and she runs the check. We can figure out something as far as.
And the way it's, the way it's done already, you code them, you look at them and still sign
Right,
what is being billed and invoiced, so.
yeah.
It still is exchanging two people's hands as far as,
Right.
either viewing what's being paid for and what they purchased.
The issue more, Nick, is if you have the same people in your office collecting money and paying money, that's a no. Unless you're a very small office,
Right.
that's a no. You cannot collect and write checks. That would be the only thing that I can think of the reason for it,
Right.
but let's ask.
Good
I-
idea. I just think
No
it would
sense
be
in
a smoother
shuffling
process
paper for
and-
shuffling paper's sake.
Anything else, Lori?
And like I just mentioned, the audit started today. Supposed to be going through Wednesday, and it was quite the hectic day, but we're plugging through. So, other than that, I don't think I have anything.
Can I ask hectic because of the things they were asking for, or hectic because of interruptions?
It's my first one,
Yeah, yeah.
so, there were a few things that I hadn't completed,
Sure.
for spreadsheets yet. But yes, they've got 3 people that are asking questions and it's just one, so. And then with getting ready for the meeting and we also were working with the applicant, and talk more about that, but, for Bradley's job, so there were a lot of interruptions with that
Lot of
today.
tentacles.
So, yeah, so today was just a multitasking day.
All right. Nobody's got any questions for Lori? We'll move on to Nick.
Yeah, I grabbed my last month's minutes, so I forgot we gotta do that again. Animex, we put a new transformer service in for Animex, that's all installed and operating. We changed out the wastewater treatment lights to LED fixtures, sounds like they're plenty enough light. We're gonna rotate one to cover more of
To the west.
the west for the treatment plant portion, where they weren't, used to be able to see while you're walking across the
Correct.
walls and
Yep.
stuff, now they can see, so we're gonna turn one more around to cover that lighting up, but, we got some funding from WPPI, so Eric suggested that we do that, quickly before the year end of purchasing them, so that's what we did, and we got them out there. 2 new services, just gonna tell you for this month is, we put 2 new services temporarily, because of the frost. We can't dig them in right now, so we laid them on the ground on Midway Street, the 2 new homes are going up. So, as soon as we can start digging those in, we'll get those dug in and installed and backfilled. Sensience, inquired for an additional service. Their, what are those tanks for again?
equalization tanks?
Equalization tanks. They had a secondary fault on, the service that goes from their main plant to the equalization tanks, which is quite a bit of stretch. They had a secondary fault, they got a temporary wire going along the fence, and they just asked what it would cost for me or the utility to install another service. Sensient's main plant is all primary metered, meaning they own all the transformers inside their fence. And this, section of the plant is kind of like a point that comes off their plant, which is pretty far separation. I did call around to other utilities to see, what other utilities would do in this situation if they have a customer that's already primary metered. Would you still provide them an additional service if they ask for it, or would you make them fix their own secondary fault and say, no, deal with it, like you have, the means to do it yourself, that kind of route. And every person I talked to said, you're gaining money from putting another service in, why not? And, so the quote is high, I mean, with transfer prices these days, and whatnot. I gave them the estimate, I haven't heard anything back. They know it's gonna be a 50-month, or 50-week lead time for transformers, so I doubt they're gonna go that route. But as far as the additional service, in my opinion, they're our largest customer, why not? I don't see a downfall not doing just this one service for them. It's not gonna accrue any cost to the utility. We got another meter charge out there then, and some usage as well, so that was given to them. We had a transmission blink back on January 24th. I got a call right away in the morning that there was a pole on fire. And when I got there, there was already ETs, or Line Energy trucks there, which never happens. We would definitely always be the line there, and it was kind of odd that line was there for any reason anyways. So that got me thinking. We got there was no fire on a pole. The whole town saw a blink, so we knew right away that it was transmission. I went back to my desk because I knew there was gonna be some plant outages coming up, and there was a plant outage for that day, where we weren't gonna see a blink. They're gonna do some switching around. And so it just got me thinking that something may have went wrong, either a switch failed or their switching procedures, someone messed up. So I reached out to Chris Chartier at WPPI. He's in contact with ATC. If there's any problems with jobs, he gets the information from them. And I got an email stating that ATC had a series of plant outages for the routine maintenance on that transmission line. On January 24th, the crew started switching the line section and had one switch open. When they were moving to open the second switch, the line tripped and reclosed. ATC performed an investigation and determined line switch 2426 LV was not closed all the way at the end of the workday on January 20th. So they had an operation failure on one of the switches. One of the blades didn't close all the way. They saw the other two and maybe couldn't see the other third hand closing all the way, so that's why it tripped open. So at least we have a reason and why. And we utilized our Facebook page and made that announcement, and been having a lot of quality feedback as far as finding it useful, going from Facebook and directly to the website with the link. And every now and then we've thrown in informational bits, and have been getting positive feedback as well. We have fault on Juneau Avenue for 2 households, 361 and 367 Juneau Avenue. Got a call from Dan, actually. One of the customers was having some voltage issues, and Dan was able to get his furnace running. We actually didn't know that 361 was not operating, so I went there the following morning right away and looked at 367's meter and found that there was no voltage yet on one of the legs of 367. And ironically enough, our map did not show an old pedestal that was in between those 2 houses. clothesline post. And, saw that there was 2 houses coming out of there, so I went next door and sure enough, they didn't have one leg of their service as well. So I laid a temporary, wire on the ground for the one leg that was, burnt up, just because they were old, pedestals, and I was having a really difficult time by myself trying to, get the one wire in there, because Shane was on vacation. And, ironically enough, it made it till Sunday. This happened on, I think you called me Thursday night, and fixed it Friday with the one temporary, and then Sunday night I got a call saying that the other one must have failed, so I went back out there. And of course Shane was gone again, so I ended up having to put all three in those. It took me a long time, but I was able to squeeze them in there and have the temporary line, until Monday. And the one out there, we fault found it, it was a foot away from the pedestal, close to the clothesline post. I was thinking that it was gonna be close to the clothesline, like they must have hit it, but it wasn't. It was about a foot and a half off. There was no rocks on it, nothing. So we put a defroster on there, we backed it out, found it, we spliced it back together, took the temporary service back out, they're back up and running as normal. Did a new service estimate for 109 North Depot Street. It's used to be the old grocery store, blue one, right on the corner of Depot and Easto. I think it was a grocery store back in the day. So, yeah, they want a, new 400 amp service. They wanna get rid of a bunch of all the meters that are on. I mean, they got a couple different, they got a 4-gang meter socket, and they also have a separate 200 amp meter socket. And their insurance isn't covering what is in there now, so they're wanting to upgrade that service to a 400 amp service. They must talk about adding some other stuff. So I figured out an estimate to, put a new service in for them. They wanna change locations of where that service is gonna be to the northwest corner of that house, instead of the northeast corner of the house, which isn't much work for us. It's actually a straighter shot for us to go in that way, but they gotta vote for that, so we'll be hearing back from them whether or not they do that or try to figure a temporary fix for that. I don't know, so. We also serviced our back trailer. We found an O-ring that was leaking. We did notice that last time we used the back trailer, we backed out 367s, 361s fault that we were losing a lot more water, had less water pressure. Found an O-ring that was leaking, so I had to order a kit to fix that. Hopefully this week if we get it. And communicating with AT&T and Charter for the second portion of this project, the East Oak portion. AT&T is ready to go, actually now it's Charter that's being the one that's hanging up right now. They were sticker shocked with the last one, and it was solely because we got into extensive rock on that knoll there, and prices went up a little bit. It still was within my budget price that I got hooks, so I don't, and their price was less than ours, so I don't see why they would have been upset with the price. So I'm communicating right now with Charter and Cooks Telecommunications, trying to get everybody on the same page here so we can get that process going. But hopefully we can all come to an agreement here and get the ball rolling on that, cause have you guys heard? Do we accept the bid yet for that road project? I've been kind of in the dark as far as that.
It's on the agenda for early.
So that's anticipating and starting at spring? And I'm guessing that the portions that are to be done are the same as what was discussed last year, that Highland was gonna get done first. Okay.
What were this last communication, what was it for the?
For East Oak, conversion for the dead end. So that's in the works, just getting that all lined up. The equipment and everything has been purchased. We got some of it already that'll be showing up. The rest of it should be showing up anytime now. So it's just getting everybody with agreement and moving forward. So I got.
By Anybody have any questions for Nick? Peter?
Okay, well, last month, I guess the highlight would have been the leaks that got fixed. You saw in the report the loss went down. I anticipate that next month it'll be down even more because we found that one leak at the end of the month, so there's that. This month, we've got the new VFDs at well 1 and 3, along with the new breaker panel at well 1, because one that was in there, I guess, was 20 years old. We cleaned out the wet wells at the wastewater treatment plant. Also, we had on our January DMR, we had a couple exceedances for our effluent BOD. I wrote an explanation out. I'll read it to you, what I put on the DMR. Our final effluent BOD results for January 11th and 12th were a 46.3 milligram per liter and a greater than 44 milligram per liter respectively. The samples appeared normal with a normal color and consistency. The issue was discovered after the final results were read on January 17th and 18th. It was Alex and Liz did an investigation of several industries in town and discovered that a company that manufactures concentrated hummingbird nectar had dumped approximately 1,800 gallons of nectar down their drain over the course of 4 days, from January 10th to the 13th. We informed the industry of the impact to the wastewater treatment plant, and they said that it would never happen again. They said that if they needed to dispose of product in the future, they would use proper disposal methods. Our opinion is that this was a routine event, as we've received a slug load of soluble BOD. So, the long and the short of it is we were not aware of it, it just happened, so fortunately it's something that had to be put on the DMR. So, and I haven't heard anything back from the DNR as of yet, so.
You guys did your due diligence.
That's
Finding it,
all
so
we could have done.
bravo.
Last weekend, I guess Liz got a call about lift station 1, pump number 1 at Larn, for a moisture seal failure. I called Sabo Mechanical that day and didn't get a response, but left a message, and they emailed me this morning and said that they'd be sending somebody to come and take a look at it. So they pulled the pump, and I guess it was pretty bad inside. So they were gonna take it back to their shop and open it up, take a look at it, and give us an estimate. But from what I'm gathering here, it's like the preventive maintenance on lift stations just hasn't been done in the past on the pumps. Where I've worked before, you pull your pumps every year, you have somebody come out and drain the oil, check everything out, check all the electrical and everything, and then you put it back in and let it run. If this one, was the last time that it was looked at was 12 years, I don't know how long the other ones were, so I'm hoping that I can get a quote so that we can get both of them pulled. And it's really just lift station 1 and lift station 4 that you don't have systems really like that, except for 5, but that's a newer one, and that could be something that could be looked at in the future. So that's basically all I got.
Do you have a preventive or a regular maintenance plan set up now that you have that control of the reins for those wells?
Well,
those
I would,
pumps?
I would like to have an outside contractor come and pull these pumps, cause they got the cranes and the know-how to
Something
rebuild
that
them
you
if
need,
they have
something
to.
that you need a budget for in the future.
I will have to, yes, just like everything else, so.
And we have something like that in place for our substations with AC Engineering. They rotate every substation on a 3-year rotation, so one gets 1 year, second year, third year. Smart, I mean, stuff happens.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything for Peter? If not. Discuss and take possible action on Sensient contract. This has been reviewed by the city attorney, from what I was informed, correct, Lori?
Let me catch up on which one you look at.
The capacity repayment agreement between the.
Yes.
They have given it, he has given the blessing on it, so.
Who's taking this to him, or what's the plan for it from here?
I do not know that.
There were some emails from Tom today that I didn't get a chance to actually look at in depth. But there was something about a percentage, we need to add the percentage in here, I think is, he sent it to you guys too, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it.
I have a call into Tom and I haven't heard anything back.
Because he had emailed me today and asked for yours and Dan's emails, addresses, so he may have sent you something.
Okay,
So there might still be a small fine tuning in this as far as the percentage that we're responsible for of the total funding.
well,
This is coming from Sensient that they're asking for this?
No, it was Tom, Unky at Baker Tilly.
there,
And
It's
he,
funny, cause the last meeting he said everything was good to go, he just wanted our attorneys to look at the footage.
yeah,
where is he wanting a number?
That email came today, you will need to see.
Yeah, let me look and see what she's doing.
I get
That was the 300,000 he was talking about tonight, jumping it up to.
Well, that was
400,000.
34.1%, yeah.
this is just saying that they're gonna pay their share of the wastewater plant.
Right, and I think what Tom was saying is they want to put in a percentage of what their share is.
50%. Just kidding.
There's, I'm looking at this thing and there's no place to
Right,
put
there
in
isn't.
any numbers.
Right, that's what Tom's email was talking about today, is something about there should be a spot in here to have that percentage. And there isn't.
Well, I was trying to get a hold of them and get to the point of having, do we need to pass this tonight?
Do you want me to go print that other email up real quick?
I mean, if he's saying to add that percentage, obviously you can.
We
We
can,
don't have that yet.
we don't have the percentage.
Right.
It was 34.1% that they wanted to put in there.
Yeah, but
But
where do
then
you
they-
put it in?
But then they upped the gallons per day to possibly 400,000.
Right, I think it was at 31% and it went to 34.1, is
38.
that?
34.1%, yeah.
Right. With the increased.
Either way,
gallons.
that verbiage will have to be applied to that.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what percentage, even if the verbiage isn't there.
We don't know where to put it.
I think, let me go back.
I don't, there's no place for it.
Unless you have a new contract that has that, unless he has a new contract as part of that email that has it in.
I mean, that's what that's what we passed last month at the council.
I wish that
Zoning.
was working.
Oh, that was,
That's that. We passed.
yeah.
This is the capacity repayment agreement.
This is the actual discharge permit. That's, what was that other one called?
This is for building and the treatment plant, their responsibility.
end of it.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
they're a
Far
month
back
too
in your
far.
page.
Too far back.
Do you want it, Tom's email
you gotta go
states
to
that he
mine.
wanted to,
See, this is right.
Right, the March is in front of it.
he said that we need to input the percentage and pass along the document to Sensi. So that's all that's all Tom thought needed to be done. But then this final email from Tom to Andrew, the attorney, said, "Hello Andrew, I just wanted to reach out and thank you for taking the lead for reviewing and enhancing the contract draft for Sensient. The initial calculations show that Sensient will be responsible for 34.1% of the total project costs, representing perhaps $4 million. So ensuring a contract that they will pay their share of the costs and not sticking the debt service to the city if they shut down the business is critical to helping the city residents and protecting the city against stranding debt service costs that could really hurt city residents.
So that needs to be in here.
I am sure that Sensient will have comments on the contract, and it may be necessary for you to meet with their attorney to hammer out any new thoughts, differences at some point in the future. So,
34 point what?
34.1.
Which is important, so it's like $225,000 with that price from the city too.
From the beginning, yeah.
I don't know how we can get, there's no place to put it in this contract.
Right, that's why he's sending it back to the attorney and having it translated.
Oh,
So we can't do it.
so we can't do anything with it. Okay,
Unless you wanna act upon it subject to that change.
Right, you could do that and improve it, but
and it's gonna,
You condition of passage.
it's on council's agenda for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know if he's gonna get the draft back by tomorrow. I mean, it's possible.
So it's not really an amendment, it's an addition in verbiage, but, yeah. I guess I would suggest that the utility act upon it with that condition met, and then we'll bounce it off the city attorney tomorrow night. We can promote it that way.
Okay.
Or if you wanna give him a call in the morning and give him a heads up,
Right.
so that he's prepared for it, or can look at this document and maybe bring a revised document along with that percentage implemented into it. I'm thinking that might be the way to do it.
Okay.
Keep it from dragging on for another month.
Okay, so let's pass this on and look for an updated with the percentage in there. Subject to that percentage being added.
It was up to 4 million.
Or did you say
Up to 4 million, not to exceed 4 million?
It says representing perhaps $4 million.
We need the 4 million out, we just need the 34.1 there.
Right.
Price of stuff going, the way the price of stuff's going up, you need, there's no cap on the number, it's
Well, that's gonna get
34.1.
warped too, if they wanna enter into a contract, that's $400,000. You know, that's gonna change that
Yeah, I
percentage.
mean, that's what I'm saying, I mean.
Isn't this 34%?
That
including the
34% is based upon the 300,000, is it?
No.
Or was the 31% based upon the?
300,000?
It went from the 31% was 300,000 and the
Okay.
34% is the 400,000.
Okay, so they,
Is what-
okay, so.
That's what I thought.
All right.
I didn't know it was that, I didn't think that 400,000 was even thought about, that might be for later on down the road.
Well, he brought it up tonight,
Yeah.
and they was talking first of all, he was fluttering around 360, and then he says,
Oh, I
I
thought
couldn't.
they were just saying, oh, we'd like it maybe if it's 350, what does it look like if it's at
Right.
400,000?
Yeah.
But it's 300,000 right now. That's what
But
surge
yeah, but they want
language
the potential for
is.
capacity.
Well, for 400,000 for later on, yeah, yeah. So we have to build them for their share for 400,000 because they're saying they want that potential in the future. Not for what they're doing now.
Right. So I guess that's something we should verify, that if they're wanting the potential of 400, that is representing that 34.1%.
You're agreeing in principle to what you got in black and white here tonight, but with the possibility of it increasing to 400,000 and increasing that percentage. At least
Sounds like the percentage did increase to
Well,
34.1 from 31
within that-
something.
he must have did that calculation to come up with that.
Okay, so there's an email from February 23rd that says, based on the new flow and loading numbers that you have elaborated with Matt and Peter on, your allocated construction costs only moved from 32.5% to 34.1% of construction costs.
We need that 34.1% somewhere in this contract.
So I believe that the 34.1 is with the increased new flow and load numbers, according to that email.
We need to send a bill for 34.1% of that $822,000.
Yeah, cause, I mean, even having that percentage in there, there'd be places where that percentage will have to be put into effect, because, I mean, it is further agreed that the plant to be constructed will be designed to facilitate the treatment of sentient wastewater up to 34.1% of, I mean, there's a couple places in there that will probably be put into effect.
It is further agreed that the permitting agrees to the repayment terms for the pro rata share of capacity attached here to as Exhibit A, and I don't have Exhibit A. That's 15.
I think that was part of something else that.
Keep it open ended like their policy.
Needs to go.
I don't know what it says.
Is there a way that you can approve, like Dan was saying, with approving it with
With that
changes
condition,
or-
yeah.
With condition that,
But I would suggest you do that, you contact the city attorney, see if you can rework that document for tonight's passage, or
Right.
tomorrow night's passage then.
We need a motion to approve this with a condition that, somewhere it says, that Sensia will be responsible for 34.1% of the cost of the wastewater treatment facility.
Is that your motion?
Sure. I'm just asking to make sure that I had the word right.
Oh, you
Has
got it close.
Lori, has Lori got it?
Well, that's part of it,
I-
that's part of it.
kinda.
That's part of it.
motion to approve Sensing contract with the condition that the 34.1% usage.
Wasn't it
34,
he
that they
asking?
would be responsible for 31.4%
I
of
don't
the
have
cost
any-
of.
No, 34.1.
34,
That's
that's what I
what I
said,
have.
34.
I don't have anything in front of me, wasn't
I
he
thought you said
asking,
31.
it's already
No,
in there
hearing
that
aids.
they're responsible for that, it's just that it's in perpetuity regardless of if they go out of business.
It's not
Isn't
written
that
in
what
this
it says?
contract.
So there's no percentage in the
In this-
contract.
Oh, at all?
No,
No.
not at all.
Just
There's
says
no,
the
that's why
reserv-
we're having this discussion
Well,
right now,
yeah.
because there is no number in here. And that's what we're saying, that's why I just made the motion that we do that, but it has to, we need that, the condition is that is written in here somewhere, that's just the way I made that motion.
Of any borrowings or any, of any?
I'm saying that the cost of the
project
sewage
cost.
treatment plant.
Okay. No project costs.
All costs and
Yeah, all costs,
Capacity.
whatever it costs to build the sewage treatment plant, they're responsible for 34.1% of it.
Okay, we have the motion. Lori's got it.
I got it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Bart, second by Ross, to approve the sentient capacity repayment agreement with the stipulation that the 34.1% of the cost is included in, somewhere in this document. All right, does everybody understand that?
should they also be that percentage be placed to hold them to that 34.1% where they can't deviate? Like say, hey, well, we changed it to 4.
No, that's, the contract is, once it's in the contract, it's in the contract. We're not renegotiating.
No, what I'm saying is, that's just the cost. I mean, they could potentially say, it's not in the contract that we have reserved 34.1% of this capacity. Cause it says in
They're
here,
locking themselves into that number by signing the contract. By signing that contract, they're locking themselves into that capacity.
Your concern with capacity isn't stated.
well, it just
Is
says,
that what you're?
it just says that it is further agreed upon that the plant to be constructed will be so designed to facilitate the treatment plant or treatment of Sensi's water, wastewater. Does it say
Should say like up to
a reserve of,
So you think it should be, say, like 400,000 gallons?
well, wherever they're
Or
getting that
34%
percentage
what the
for.
design?
As an
capacity
example,
is
if
for
funds
heat
borrowed
loading or-
for the project are over a 20-year term, Sensient's repayment will also be 20 years. In no case shall the requirement payment be less than the initial term of the borrowing for the project. So by signing this, they're stuck.
Yeah, but we were concerned with the amount of discharge that they're giving to us. It's not stated in their 400 gallons capacity max.
400,000. It's in the agreement we passed last.
Well, that
For
one last month
overages.
was 300,000. That was just the surge language at the present time. This is for when after the plant is built. So
That would be.
34.1% I think is 400,000 gallons, if that's what they
I
want.
think that's what it
So that's-
translates out to from what I've.
Yeah.
So that's 400,000 gallons of, say, 800,000 or whatever, you know, 900, a million gallons, whatever.
So then,
I think it should. I mean, why, what prevents them from all of a sudden saying, we're just gonna send you more volume?
Somebody else new in management says that.
We have a contract that says how much volume they can send. We have another piece of paper, or
Yeah,
contract,
for
or
surge.
actually law that tells them how much they can send at that
That's
point.
their-
And
that's
once
what
the
it
new
is.
sewage treatment plant is, I'm sure there will be a new law telling them what they can discharge.
Say in 10 years, they wanna go to 450,000. Do we change their debt service halfway through? I would think, yeah.
No, we wouldn't bill them one.
Well, I guess
For the-
what's the responsibility?
For that, or, that's one of those things where, that would be an agreement that we'd have to, see, with the way that we approach this now, we have a law that says that's how we approached it, that says they can discharge this much, and if they discharge much more than that, then they pay a penalty. As I understand what we did,
I
A
didn't
month
realize
ago.
that amendment, that
says 300,000 gallons per day, so, yeah, we can't clear it.
If they discharge more than that,
So
then we,
this
Alright.
then they
takes
get
care of
charged.
your concern, the
Right.
34.1% is the only thing that we're missing now in this.
Okay.
But now that 34.1 doesn't add up to that maximum day discharge limit, so.
Well, but I think that was part of the deal, is when we get to that point, there will be a new,
It's a forward thinking.
yeah, there will be a new,
Resolution.
yes, that's the word I was looking for. I
All
couldn't
right.
think of it, but she thought of it, then it will be a new resolution that
I
will,
still have a brain
be
tonight.
probably when the new plant is built, there will be a new resolution.
All right. Everybody's got this down now? All right. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Update on the utility billing clerk replacement. As we offered it to a lady, I don't know if she's accepted.
Not as of yet.
She is not at, so we're kind of waiting for her decision.
She had some questions on, benefits and retirement, and she spoke with Pam today, and, originally she had asked for a day or two to think about it and let me know. That was as of last Tuesday. So I let her know in an email today that she has until the end of business day tomorrow, because that will be 1 week since we made the offer. Because then now she did actually talk to Pam. I answered questions. I was in over the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, and had emails from her both days and got back to her on those questions. And so there's been a lot of back and forth communication, and so I felt that it was time for her to make a decision.
Okay.
So we should know something by tomorrow.
We interviewed 3 ladies the first time, and 2 the other time. Ross was in on the second time. And Kylie and Lori were here for the questioning, and they picked for this one, the one we're offering it to, as the best. And the other one is equally qualified, I believe, so if she doesn't accept, we will offer it to the other lady. So that's where we're on that. And the other one, we had Peter's review. Was just you and I? No, you were here for that?
Yeah, he was here for that.
Okay.
That was a while ago.
So.
Because we didn't have a meeting last month.
Yeah, so, and we recommended at that time to, raise Peter's wages up to $32.71 effective.
Effective day of 6/1?
No,
Effective the day of the actual first day.
yeah, it would be effective as of, when the heck did we do that?
January.
It's January sometime.
January 31st. So it would be effective February 1st. And he will receive back pay. I don't know if we need to have a motion on that, or, but that's what we, so, that is that. Congratulations, you passed your review with flying colors.
Thank you.
And to remind supervisors, your review of your employees is due.
May.
You're welcome. And I have a couple more to do, all right? I just finished Peters, so that takes care.
I'm backing up here. You're gonna have to take action on that, cause you didn't have a quorum to discuss and take possible action at that meeting.
Yeah, we did at the personnel
The
meeting.
personnel meeting we did.
It was
Well, you
three-
did.
Yes,
Yeah.
That was the personnel meeting.
that was a personnel meeting.
So was that on the agenda for the meeting that we didn't have a quorum?
Yeah.
Yes,
Probably.
it was.
Okay, alright.
So we added it to
That's,
this.
I'm thinking that was the meeting that you were taking action at.
Oh,
Okay.
no,
they had
that's
one.
already
Okay.
separate.
Personnel.
Cause then you'd have to
You
take
just
action
thrown all
at this
the-
meeting.
All the
if
stuff
we-
from last meeting got thrown out of this meeting.
Okay,
All right,
gotcha.
that's all I have, except that, the end of this month, the last week of this month, I will be unavailable. So if you have any problems, need to talk to Mr. Caniff.
He's got my phone number now.
So, I hope to be back in full swing by the next utility meeting in April.
That over?
You're gonna give me something so I don't need that stick. All right,
That was something
Mr. Mayor, you have anything?
Nope.
Any old business? New business, we will put that on for we will have another meeting sometime this month.
We also need to put in there, please, Mac, in regards to that new business and discussion, and again, it comes back to our policy here. It's brought to my attention as a personnel committee person in regards to section 214 and inclement weather. On rare occasions, weather or other conditions may cause interruption of the normal work schedule such that the mayor determines that employees shall be sent home. In that event, the employee shall be paid for the full workday. The mayor may also decide that employees have the option to stay at work or go home. Any employee who chooses to go home will not be paid for the balance of the day, but will be given the opportunity to make up the lost hours during the balance of the work week if possible. In the event of an emergency, whether or other situation exists at the start of the workday or continues from the previous day, employees who do not report for work shall not be paid. However, at the employee's request, the day or days may be counted as vacation time or compensatory time if available, rather than have their pay reduced because of the missed time. There was an action taken, employees were directed to go home, not by the mayor. And so the question is asked, are we sticking with this policy handbook, or are we directing our own?
The ladies here can work from home.
Okay. It was a question that had to be asked as far as who's giving the direction and are we following
I
the?
don't know, I mean, they both can work from home, so I mean,
Okay.
it would've been nice to be informed that this action was taken at City Hall. I knew nothing about it.
Neither did I.
Lori called me and I told her.
After I talked to him.
Oh, okay, no. You didn't tell me you talked to him. So,
I mean, we.
I guess I trumped him,
Well-
so, you know, that's what it boils down
The
to.
policy book.
And I was,
The other
I-
issue I'd like to bring up with that is we didn't receive an email from Megan until the Monday after that snow day, so we weren't able to make up any time because we didn't know all of what was going on. We were told that the mayor called the day off.
I don't know.
Or that we were told that the mayor said approved the late start, and then that would be determined to be coming in afterwards. And then I was called by Pam to tell me that, that it was agreed upon that we don't have to come in that day. So in my mind, that all came from the mayor, that's the way it was all delivered.
So it's your fault.
And
No.
we didn't have the rebuttal of it until the following
There's
Monday.
too many people in the chain, that was the whole deal, you know.
We didn't have the rebuttal until the following Monday to be able to find out that, no, we're not getting paid for that day because it wasn't the mayor's decision, and that we can make up time, and at that point, it's too late.
Did you work from home that day, either
I
one
did
of you?
some work from home, I was here for 2 hours before I left that. And and I also came in on
Did-
Saturday.
Did Megan work from home, or Pam,
They
or?
were gonna do a late start and then they canceled out and they were all aware of it, they would get paid if they made the decision.
I also
But I
worked
didn't-
on
They worked
Saturday.
late in case they did, because we were unaware, because we read the policy as well.
Yeah,
So they ended up working late following days, just in case. They
Try and make up.
you
Right.
didn't see the
Yeah.
And we,
email come
and we
through.
normally don't take lunch hours either, so we figured between lunch hours that we don't take. I worked on that Saturday, I worked about 5 hours on that Saturday, and I didn't put time in for that, so.
And I think you made your time out.
Well, that's this weekend, that was the prior weekend,
Well, we can
that
take
snow
action
day.
on a future
Well,
personal thing.
this hasn't happened in 10 years, and this
Right.
was all new for a lot of us, and now that.
and please don't think I'm being a bigot.
Oh,
That is not my objective, it really is not, it just,
But no, you were told the same story Megan was told, leave it up to the employee and don't wanna be responsible for somebody.
I asked the direct question, would we be paid if we would not be here, and I was told yes. Because the
Who
mayor.
told you that?
I talked to Pam. She was told by Megan that she said, from what I understand from Megan, yes, we would be paid because it's the mayor's decision.
No.
So miscommunication from,
No, like I said,
City Hall.
and that's certainly not the conversation I had with Megan. After the fact, of
Yeah.
course, you know, but, no, I gave them the opportunity to do a late start. She called me about, I'm gonna say about 6:45, Megan did. And I told you, I said, quite frankly, I didn't think about, I didn't know how the chain would, if she would
Right.
send an email out or how communication would be transported, but, you know, or transmitted. And then, of course, when you called me and you said you and Kylie were already here, and I said, well, I will leave it up to you if you feel uncomfortable about staying here, that you could
Right.
leave early. But no discussion was ever talked about wages, about whether you would be paid or not.
well, and that's why because her comment to me or our discussion was, if the people that are not coming in are getting paid, then why
No.
should we stay?
And they're not. And
Well,
they were not.
but that's how strongly we were that we were getting paid.
Yeah, we were all here.
Sorry, but we were here all day. So.
I made up my time.
Did you, how did the water work? Did the rain bother you at all?
No,
Oh, okay,
business as usual.
okay. Is there any more business? If
Mhm.
not,
I'm sorry, did we need to have something, that discussion under new business? That's what that was, right?
yes.
Thank you. You can adjourn now.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you.
I second.
That motion by Cheryl, second by Bart to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, your vote counts.